Hello, everyone, and welcome to this important Instagram Live. I'm Bobby Penn, and today we're shedding light on a harrowing story of injustice and resilience. Imagine being just 20 years old, wrongfully accused, and spending over 2 decades behind bars for crime you didn't commit. This was reality for Deon Patrick. In 1992, Deon was arrested and later convicted for the double murder of Jeffrey Lasseter and Sharon Hugglebuck in Chicago. Alongside seven others, he was coerced into confessing to these crimes. A tragic example of systemic failures leading to wrongful convictions, particularly among Black men. After 21 long years, Deon's conviction was vacated in 2014 and he was finally freed. His journey from incarceration to exoneration is a testament to his resilient and unwavering spirit and the ongoing fight for justice. Tonight, we're not just talking about Deon's story. We're also looking ahead to an incredible event happening on January 15th at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. Deon and his co-authors of the Hazel Boyz, The Trials of Four Innocent Men, will host a gathering unlike any other. It's not just a book signing. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a rallying cry for justice reform. The evening will feature a powerful panel discussion moderated by esteemed attorney Stuart Channon, joined by Nicole Ninema, both of whom were instrumental in Deon's exoneration. Following the panel, there will be a reception where attendees can engage directly with the authors and hear their powerful story firsthand. The memoir sheds light on systemic failures within our justice system while celebrating the ultimate victory of truth and perseverance. Tonight, Deon joins us live to share his journey, the significance of this upcoming event, and why it's so critical to talk about wrongful convictions, especially for Black men who are disproportionately impacted. We encourage you to engage with us, share your thoughts, ask questions, and make sure you hit that share button to spread the word. Let's amplify Deon's story and work together towards a more just future. Let me go ahead and bring Deon up. Joining us. There he is.
Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Patrick.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
being here.
Thank you.
Let's begin by discussing the events that led to your arrest in 1992. Can you take us back to that day? What were you doing at that time, and how did your life change when you were accused of such a crime?
Um, at that time, I think I was in a very uh, unthought-provoking time in my life, right, where I was making a lot of bad decisions and doing things the wrong way. I had lost a lot already, and I think I had like gravitated to my friends more so in our neighborhood and hanging out a lot and just being around. I don't even want to say the wrong guys, because I think all of us were like misguided young men that just really didn't understand what to do with our lives at the time and how to navigate our lives. And so at that time, we were just all like hanging out in our neighborhood, being around each other every day. Not really like the neighborhood kind of became our family. Like a lot of us were, not me, myself, but some people in the neighborhood were part of the system. And so we just all gravitated to each other and started to hang out a lot.
So, what was going through your mind when they brought you in? I saw some footage of you with the Chicago Tribune, and they talked to you about the moment that they brought you into the holding room to ask you questions. What was going through your mind when you were coerced into confessing to a crime that you didn't commit?
I think initially when they came to my house, I couldn't believe that they were even at my house because we always knew like we had absolutely nothing to do with it. Were we in that neighborhood every day and around that area? Yes. But like no one was actually worried about them coming to mess with us because we knew that that incident had nothing to do with us. So I think when I first went in the room, I was kind of relaxed because I didn't think it was going to go that far because I knew that nobody was, well, at least I thought that no one would actually say that they saw me there or that I was there because I knew I wasn't there.
That's terrifying. That anyway, we're going to get to the detective and some of the other pieces of this case.
Mhm.
But while you were in prison for that 20-year stint, knowing you were innocent, how did you cope?
Man, I think even in that place, like, I learned a lot about myself, right? And a lot about us as people. Like, we've been adapting to things all our lives since the beginning of time. We adapted to slavery and other things of that nature, right? Like, so we adaptative people where we just adapt to our environments, right? And I think for me, like, I made a lot of missteps in there too. Like, just getting in there and just trying to stay alive when I first got there, making sure that I walked out of there the way I walked in. It just made me gravitate towards the wrong crowd all over again and doing things that really wasn't me. But it was like, okay, how do I survive this situation? Because
Yeah.
I think for like my first 4 or 5 years, I didn't even go to the law library because it was more about survival and making sure that I lived to see the next day. So the law library wasn't on my things to do list because at the time I'm 22 years old. They just gave me two natural lives, 60 and 30, and a part of me had really given up in that split moment, but it was still some things that I had to live for and to fight for, which my son and my daughter was born at the time. So I just felt like a lot of my fight was contingent on me getting back to them as opposed to what I was doing for myself.
And that's truly inspiring to go in feeling defeated and not necessarily optimistic to remembering that there's something for you to focus on and doing what you need to do to get yourself out of there. I'm so inspired by that. What was the most difficult part of watching Daniel Taylor and the others walk free before you? How did you hold on to hope?
Uh, uh, I think my other two co-authors, Lewis and Paul, like they only had 30 years, so they had an out date. So we already knew they were only going to do 15 years before they went home. Not thinking that it would take us that long to get home, but we knew that they had an out date. Like me and Daniel actually didn't have an out date. So we were just there going through the motions. But I think to watch him go, it was like we were in the same facility, but we were in two different cell houses. We was in two different buildings, and I was laying on my bunk because I was in my cell, and I could hear him coming up the stairs, and he's yelling my name. And I'm trying to figure out why is he even over here, unless they done moved him to my building and he's gonna be over here with me. And when he gets to my cell, he was like, "Man, I'm going home." And I'm like, "What?" Like, what you mean you going home, right? So a part of me, like, it didn't startle me, but it was shocking to hear
Yeah.
because we had been fighting for so long that it caught me off guard. And so he was like, "Yeah, they just overturned my case. I'm going home today." Like, man, turn on the news. So when he left, the first thing I did was I turned the news on and I pulled my two legal boxes out and I pulled all my paperwork out and I had a conversation with my cellmate, and I'm like, that's what we've been waiting for. Like 6 months to a year, I'll be at home. Like I won't still be here. And he's like, what you mean? I'm like, he was the key to this whole case. So when I watched Daniel go, it was like, and like I told Steve Mills that day in an interview, it wasn't bittersweet. It was like sweet bitter because I was happy for him, but I was still bitter that I had to still be there. So I was definitely happy to see him leave.
Yeah. I love that they allowed him to even come see you, though. I would have assumed they would have made you guys be separate. So I'm sure that had to give you a glimmer of hope. Like you said, you were able to kind of predict, like, all right, if he's out, then that means I'm on my way out. So
Yeah.
I think that was a silver lining in that. When you finally walked free in 2014, what was the first thing you did and what did freedom feel like?
Oh, man. Like that day was different because I had no idea I was going home. Like the state had given me and my attorneys the impression that they were challenging my petition, that they weren't letting me go. So I was preparing for another court date in February. So my lawyer's story was that they got a call January 9th and asked them could they be in court in the morning. They had no idea what for either. So they was like, sure, we could be there on the 10th. So when they got there on the 10th, the state just had them a vacate order saying they was vacating my conviction and they was letting me go. So I still have no clue that this is happening because I'm all the way down south. I'm like 6-7 hours away from Chicago. So they hopped in, they grabbed my son and Daniel, and they came down to where I was at. And before that, though, like early in that day, like I got moved around a lot. I actually thought they were about to take me to segregation for some stuff that had happened in the joint, but they moved me out of my cell. And then later we went to the yard. So they came and got me from the yard and just was like, when they got to my door, they was like, pack your stuff, you going home. And I'm like, what? Like, stop playing with me because I don't want to pack my stuff and then they tell me, oh, you're not going home. They playing, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. They like, man, your lawyer's on their way down here to pick you up right now. Pack your stuff. And so when I first walked out, like the first person I seen was my son, Lil Deon. And like it had been years since, because I was so far away that I really didn't put that much pressure on my family to take that drive. Because I felt like a lot of that time, like I had to get comfortable and I didn't want to be in there worried about who was coming to see me and who wasn't coming to see me. So I would get focused on just doing my time and figuring out how to get home. And so just walking out, like seeing him, it was different for us. Because like even like them picking him up, he didn't want to come at first. Because when I left, my son was 11 months old. At this time, he's 22. And he started crying because he didn't believe it. He didn't think that he was really going to pick up his dad. So he didn't want to get in that car and find out it was just a bad joke or somebody was playing. But they did talk him into the car. So I think for me, uh, it was definitely where we had a good rejoining. But we went to a restaurant when we left there. And that was kind of weird for me because I hadn't been inside a restaurant in 21 years, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like people were ruder in the restaurant than they were in the penitentiary, right?
Wow.
And I say that because like they was reaching over our plates and doing stuff that I've never really seen. I was taught that as a kid, you don't reach over people's food, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at everybody watching me though, like it's okay. This is what they do. This. It just was so different because I wasn't prepared mentally for it because it happened like that.
Yeah.
So I really just got snatched out of penitentiary mindset and put back into society. And it's like, okay, now deal with it. And here I go again, adapting to a new environment that I hadn't been in over 20 years.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that, but I do see some comments that want to get to some of the more systemic matters. So I got questions for that too. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah.
Detectives, I hope I'm saying his name right because we want to blast this guy. Detective Ronaldo Guevara, okay? The
Yeah.
detective who was tied to your case has been linked to not just the seven
Now,
of you, but
let
at
me
least.
let me say this though. Guevara wasn't attached to our case. He worked
Oh, okay, okay.
at another district, but I do know a lot of guys from Humboldt Park and the near West Side that he was attached to their case.
Okay.
So it
So
was
let's
other
just
detectives on
use
our
him as an
case.
example.
Exactly.
Okay, so as an example, Detective Guevara is linked to at least 20 wrongful convictions.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel knowing that you were part of such a systemic problem?
I think like my thought process on the Chicago police is that it's learned behavior. Like a lot of those guys that we're talking about now, like the Guevaras and the other guys that were lead detectives on homicides, they were taught by John Burge, who had did a lot of bad things in the 60s and the 70s to black men and brown men. And so he taught a lot of his tactics to them. And I think like for me, I know like their process now. I understand their process and not just them, even with the state's attorney's office, right? They climb the ranks with closing cases. So they really don't care how they close them. It's just close this case, and then I will get a raise, and then I'll move up the ranks to a higher position in the police station or the state's attorney's office. And it's sad because there's no true accountability for them, because the things they do, they change people's lives forever, right?
Yeah.
And when I first came home, they asked me a question when I was on the news doing my civil suit. They like, what would you like to see for them? I want to see them go to jail, because no amount of money that you can give someone for what you've taken from them can give back what they've lost, right?
Yeah.
And they still get a pension. They still living happily with their families. They got to watch their kids grow up, their grandkids grow up. And I just feel like the only way that it's going to stop, you have to start sending those guys to jail. And there has to be some type of consequences for their behavior.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then it's just going to keep happening, because I still think it's happening. I don't think it's stopped, even with all the safeguards they put in place now. I think it still happens every day.
Yeah, it does. It does. Black men are disproportionately affected by wrongful convictions.
Hmm.
Why do you think this happens so often? And you already touched on some of it, but what else do you think needs to be done to see change?
I think, like I just said, like first and foremost, there has to be some accountability put in place for the officers that take part in these acts, that know, because they know what they're doing. It's not like they made mistakes. Because I can understand a mistake. Okay, we accidentally charged this guy, but when you start to fabricate evidence and move pieces and do things of that nature, that's not a mistake no more. That's an intentional act. And now, I think the one thing, like they put some safeguards in place where they videotape confessions. They first they just started with that, but now they're actually videotaping the entire interrogation, right? And they're trying to keep doing certain things, but I still like think they get around it, because a lot of the times us in those rooms are kids, and we're talking to a person who's been schooled in manipulation of how to manipulate your mind and your thoughts. Because it was so crazy for me, like sitting in that room. When I walked in there, I was confident that, oh, I had nothing to do with this. But they beat me up so much with their mental, not physical, that I, I started asking myself, like, where were you that night?
Wow.
Like, was you over there? And it's like, no, bro, you couldn't have been there, because I know I wasn't there. But when they constantly bash you with this, and they coming in with people lying, and they said this person said this person said that, it makes you start to wonder. And then I've never gotten high. I don't get drunk. I don't do none of that. So I know it ain't my mental state. Like I haven't forgot, but it just is. They allow
You
them.
gaslight,
They
yeah.
allow them too much leeway in those rooms, and especially at that time, they were getting physical with. I think the one thing stopped them from getting physical with me. I had an attorney before, so when I first went in there, I was like, I want to call my attorney, which is your right, but they didn't let me, because at that time it's my word against theirs. They're saying I never requested an attorney. I had dealt with the system before, so I knew my attorney's number by heart still. I was actually I wasn't home but 3 months when this happened, so I was still in touch with my attorney. And they, they didn't give me that phone call, but they always say that I never asked for an attorney. Like, why wouldn't I? When I have an attorney on file that's my attorney, like, but I think they definitely have to do some more. Uh, they got to put some more rules in place for them, because they just do what they want to do. And like as far as Guevara, like just knowing some of the guys that went through that with him and what he was doing, it's sad, because what they do is they'll find some other guys that get in trouble, right? That may not like you. Hey, we need you to say he did X, Y, Z, and we'll let you go. And then they'll do it because they already don't like you, and they trying to get out of trouble. And then it's like, but now when it all come out, they feel bad 10, 15 years later. But it's like, how did you even end up in that position where you allowed this man to get you to come and lie on somebody to take their life away from them?
Well, can we talk about that a little more? What do you think the role race plays in stories like this, right? Especially now as we continue to talk about justice reform.
It's a huge role in our community, right? Because I feel like just coming home, when I came home in 14, like our neighborhoods look like occupied territories now.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look like us. And I'm not even a person that comes from a background where like I hate the police. I have family members that were police. So, but at that time, we knew the police because some of them lived on our block. Their mothers and fathers raised them on our blocks. But now there's no police from our neighborhood. Like when you look, it's all cats from these racist areas in Chicago.
Okay.
And their whole objective is to come down there and put their foot on our neck and stand on us and make sure we don't do certain stuff.
Profiling.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but I'm proud of you and I'm grateful for you and your co-authors for using your experience and using your voices to tell your own story. So why is it so important for people to hear these stories, especially now, and to hear them in you guys' own words?
I feel like it's important because society is changing. When I came home, I worked in violence prevention, and my whole goal was like to not be a part of the problem anymore, to be a part of the solution and try to help these younger guys navigate certain situations. And I used to tell the group because we worked out of the Dr. King's 6 steps and principles. So, and I used to tell them all the time, like I think we have it worse because the one thing I could say about Dr. King, and they knew what racism looked like because they were blatant with it and they showed them that this is what we doing. Now it could be right in our face and we won't even know it's sitting there like they're not racist. And I think like it happens in our community because a lot of people don't come from our community and they don't care because it doesn't impact their kids.
Yeah.
And in those same rooms, I used to talk to parents like who may have lost a child and they be wanting somebody arrested and I'll be telling them like, be careful what you wish for because you'll look up and they'll have your nephew for some stuff he didn't do. And then you'll be on the flip side of that saying, my nephew innocent, he shouldn't be there. Because when you start to pressure them, they stop doing their job. They just go out and get anybody. And it's like, that doesn't help our community because the actual perpetrator of the crime is still out here. So it's like, who did you really help or save there?
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments too. People have chimed in. Dr. Nikki said Chicago is a highly segregated city and there is little to no relationship between community and police. Daniel Taylor, who we were speaking about, hi Daniel, he said because there are many, many guys and girls in the same situation. And Ray Washington added that you are the voice for the people who aren't heard. So again, thank you so much for using your voices to write this book, The Hazel Boyz, as well as to speak at the event that's coming up on January 15th. For viewers watching and listeners, because this will be a podcast later, for the listeners who are listening, who may not have experienced this firsthand, what's one thing you want them to understand about the experience of being wrongfully convicted?
I think for the most part, people got to understand it happens because you also have a part of society that believes in the system. If they say you did it, you did it. And it's like, I never thought that was true because I come from a community where people put drugs on people, they put guns on people, they put cases on people, right? And me and Daniel had an attorney before, and she was like, what percentage of guys that are, because everybody, I think one thing you learn in jail is like 85 to 90% of the people that are going to say, I didn't do it. And so people like, oh, everybody couldn't have not did it, which is probably true, right? But she asked me like, how many people do I think are actually there for something they do? And I said, probably about 30%. And she's like, you think it's that low? I'm like, yes, because they start very small with motive. So it's like, if they could find somebody that don't like you, that puts you there, you're going to have to fight for your life and prove that you didn't do that. So it's like, and it's not just with murders, it's with all cases. And I think like we've been given an opportunity to become the voice of the voiceless because we still communicate with a lot of our friends that we met in there because some of them, we grew up with them. Like Lewis was 15, Daniel was 17, and we came out of there 15 and 20 years later. So these are guys that we actually grew into young men with because I think we go in there thinking we men, but we really don't be. Like we be boys that still making childish and boyish decisions, right? And then when you finally evolve, for some of our brothers in there, it'd be too late because they don't get a chance to show people that they've changed because there's some people in society that believe we don't have the capacity to change, that we're going to always be the kid that stole out the candy store or did this. It's like, no, this a grown man now. He don't think like that. He don't move like that. And the things that he thought was important to him back then, he knows is not important anymore.
Yeah. You lose that opportunity to evolve.
Exactly.
And Daniel commented, he said you lose a lot. When he came out, he only had 10 years with his mom, and he was saying that you can't get that time back. So again, I'm really proud of you guys for using something that was so hard to inspire other people. And I hope that young men or young people in general, but especially Black people, pay attention and not be so blind and understand that the system is sometimes rigged against us, just saying what it is. So let's talk about the significance of your January 15th event. What does this book signing event mean to you, especially being hosted at the Center on Wrongful Convictions, the same organization that helped fight for your freedom?
That meant a lot to us. And I think we were all like brainstorming on where would we like to do it. And that was like the first place that me and Daniel thought of, because the center actually changed our life. The Chicago Tribune changed our life because we had some reporters that fought tooth and nail for us and told us in 1998 that they wasn't leaving until we were at home. And we didn't come home to 2000. He came home in 13. I came home in 14. When we first met Karen Daniel, who unfortunately has passed away, she was Daniel's attorney. And she couldn't take my case because there would have been a conflict of interest, but she interviewed me about certain facts of the case.
Okay.
And I think that day, like, she was blown away by Daniel already, right? And then when she met me, she was like, I'm going to find somebody to help you, because ain't no way y'all should be sitting in here. And that's how I ended up with Stuart Channing and Nicole Auerbach. But Stuart is a product of the Center for Wrongful Conviction, but he had went off into the private practice at the time. So it was like a perfect match for her, because he's someone that she knows, and she know that we're going to stay on the same page. Like, they're not going to get me in a room and say, well, if you take this cop out, we'll let you go, but we need you to say Daniel did X, Y, Z. So it's like, nah, that's not happening. So we just knew that we had strong teams that were going to support us and stay behind us. And Karen assured us, like, I'm going to see y'all out of here. Y'all not standing here, because we should have never been there. Like, Daniel was in jail the day this case happened. And they still took 20 years from this man before they let him go, which is ridiculous. Like, they not our alibi. They paperwork said that he was in jail.
That's crazy.
And you still allowed this man to sit in here for 20 years? Like, come on, make it make sense. Like, and then when you see them again after all of that, and you in the civil process, they still standing by what they did. And it's like, how? But that's the part that shows me that they don't care, because it don't affect their kids. Like, their kids still living in a nice house, went to a nice school, probably went off to college, but you changed these young guys' life and their kids and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So talk to me about the significance of the January 15th date. Of course, we know that's Martin Luther King Day.
Yes, definitely. For me, like, in 2 days will make 11 years for me coming home. So we were really trying to get around December the 2nd or the 5th, but it got so close to the holidays, so we did it like a month later. But it's like, now we're looking at 20, almost 30, like some odd years of the day this case happened and when it all started to unravel and unfold, right? So for us, it's like we're actually given an opportunity to tell our story, because people have been telling our story for too long. And that goes for the police, the state's attorney. Then we allow like the reporters to tell our story, which they were telling on our behalf. But now you're actually hearing it from us. And you're getting to see like how this has directly affected some of us, because, and it brought us back together, because the only two of us that were still in communication was me and Daniel. We got back in touch with Paul and Lewis, and that relationship has reformed, and we check on each other now and make sure each other's all right. And so I think Northwestern, the role they played in our life, like, it's you can't like put you can't say how much they impacted our life, because it doesn't stop. And then like for us, I feel like we have an obligation now to help the guys that are still in there, that are looking for help, to try to prove their innocence and get back home as well. So it's just about us getting our story out to the world, and the world understanding that things happen. And I think we live under the premise. They always say you're innocent until proven guilty, but I think as black men, we live under the guilty until proven innocent mantra, where when they lock us up, they feel like we did it. Ain't no way he didn't do it, because that's who's sitting here. And we just have to get that narrative out of there and get the same shake or a fair chance that everybody else gets.
Absolutely. In closing, after everything you've been through, Deon, what does justice look like to you now?
I don't know, because I don't know if I've still ever seen justice. So it's like, because like we got robbed, and we got robbed of a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And some guys come out of this situation and really struggle with readapting to society. So it's like, I think when I see justice, I would know what it looks like, right? But I think just the way it moves and goes now, like I don't believe there is a justice for us right now over here. I think it's just about, some of us are fortunate enough to get the help and get the people behind them to get the results that they want, and some don't. And some innocent men truly die in the penitentiary for stuff they didn't do. Yeah. And whether it's on death row or just growing old in there, right? So I think like, man, that question is deep though, because now you're gonna have me looking for justice and what it looks like, right? So I really got to think about that, because like I still feel like they do the same things, they just do it a different way. Because I still feel like they grabbing our babies at them young ages and they throwing them in them rooms and they telling them that they other little kid friend over there telling on them, and now he want to tell some stuff, and now he want to make up some stuff, and now our kids are sitting in the penitentiary for the next 20, 30 years, and when they didn't have nothing to do with what they're sitting there for. So I think I really have to put some thought to that, because I don't know if I've ever seen justice. Like courtrooms still scare me. I don't like walking in courtrooms because I've never had a positive outcome in one. So it's like just those environments do something to me where I don't really like being in them.
Completely understandable. I don't like being in them either. And I've had my own run-ins, but nothing to the extent that you have. So I cannot blame you for that. How can those of us who are passionate about criminal justice reform and wanted to see changes, how can we support the movement and support you guys, the Hazel Boyz?
I think buy the book, follow us, continue to follow our page, see what we got going on. We have it, and it's so like for us, like the culture has changed, because we have a network of guys. Like a lot of these guys that are commenting on here, they did 25 and 30 years. Like we have a network of guys that have come home and did the right thing. Like one of our brothers, Wendell Robinson, he is the executive director of Illinois Restored Justice now. Like came home as like a person that they were teaching, and now that's his entire program. And he's the one that's sitting in Springfield that's trying to change sentencing guidelines. He just got a bill passed as far as juvenile natural life and making sure that they know, because he was a juvenile natural lifer, and just fighting the different systematic injustices that we are faced with. And so I think just getting behind the movement, because restorative justice is big and it's needed, because a lot of us go in there as kids and we don't even understand the things that we do at that time. But when you see this man 20, 30 years later, this is a totally different person that can come home and really contribute to society and help the young guys out here that are really trying to navigate this stuff and figure out. Because a lot of us, like I tell people a lot, like I had 9 aunties. I had one uncle, but he passed when I was probably 8 months old, so I don't know him. So a lot of us are raised by women, and we raised by strong women, but it's still, we're raised by women, so we don't really know what a man looks like. I don't really know any of my cousins' dads, and it's a lot of us. So it's like we were always around our aunties. So just getting behind strong, not just black men, but black people that are really trying to push this needle and make sure that this stuff starts to sway in our direction a little bit, because it starts with baby steps, and then we'll be able to take it to another level. But we definitely need to be heard, and we need our voices to be heard.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Deon, for sharing your story with us tonight. Your journey is a reminder of the work we still have to do. To everyone watching, let's keep this conversation going, all right? So make sure you share this live, talk about it with friends, and support organizations like the Center on Wrongful Convictions. Together, we can push for the change that we need. And if you are in the Chicago area, please make sure that you come out and support the book signing January 15th at the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law from 4 to 7 p.m. Thank you again, Deon.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.